first, I want to take a minute and share something that has been on my mind lately. And I'm going to do it in a way that asks you for some help in doing something about it. One of the great parts of my job, there are many great parts of my job, but one of my great favorite parts of my job is that I get to visit lots of schools. And I see amazing things happening. But sometimes I also see areas where we could maybe have a little more work, an opportunity to do a little better. One of those areas is in how we teach digital citizenship. Now, digital citizenship, I will say, is the only element that is mentioned in the student, teacher, and leader standards. So apparently we think it's important enough to have it show up in all three. Now, usually when I'm visiting a school, people will tell me that digital citizenship is being taught in their school. But when I ask what they teach, they usually say things like, well, we make sure kids know not to post inappropriate pictures online. Or we make sure they know how to make strong passwords. Those are important things. I don't want kids posting inappropriate pictures online, but that's not digital citizenship. That's online safety. And online safety is not the same as digital citizenship. Digital citizenship is about using technology to make your community better, to respectfully engage with people who have different beliefs from yours, to be able to shape and change public policy, to be able to recognize the validity of online sources of information. Digital citizenship, it turns out, is not a list of don'ts, but a list of do's. Thank you. You can clap for that. And never has it been more important than it is now. I grew up in Rhode Island, and down the street from where I was growing up, there was a professor, Don Liu, worked for the University of Connecticut. He did a great study. And what he wanted to do is he wanted to see how good students were at recognizing false information online. So he had a simple task. He went to middle school students, and he asked the middle school students to write an essay on the northwestern tree octopus. And when they went to search for it, they found a very legit-looking site that Professor Liu had created, right? And the goal of the study was simple. It was just to see how many of the students called out the fact that, based on everything they know, that there could be no such thing as a tree octopus. Only one student in his study called him out. All the others handed in their essay, cited with information from the site. Look, they had quotes and vocabulary defined, right? Handed it all in, never even questioned. Our ability to recognize truth from fiction is essential to our survival as a society. We used to teach that if it was in print, it was true. But as more and more information transitioned to the digital space, that was no longer a very good indicator. So then we used to say, look, based on the name or the graphic design of the site, that's a pretty good indicator. If it looked like an official news site and had a news-sounding name, it was probably a reliable source. But now you can register a URL and download a WordPress theme in 15 minutes and look more legit than the Chicago Tribune. So we have to evolve and develop new skills for distinguishing truth from fiction. These new skills, they don't just happen. They have to be taught. But here's the catch. They have to be taught in context. See, context matters. If there's one thing that we know from learning science, it's that it's very difficult to take something, to transfer something that was learned in one context into a different environment than it was taught in. Reading a textbook about playing music is little indication that you can be successful when you have an instrument in your hands. We all do this, right? We learn something in one context, it doesn't transfer. The other day I was in church, and we had a great lesson about being kind to others, right? At the end of the lesson, I made sure I was the first to the door to open the door for that little old lady that was walking out. And I made sure I thanked the teacher for the great lesson that she gave. And then I got into my car. There I was honking, cutting people off, trying to get out of the church parking lot, right? We know this. We know that it's difficult to transfer something learned in one context to another. If we only teach what respectful debate looks like in the classroom, we should not be surprised when our students aren't respectful when adding an opposing comment to the end of a blog. If we only teach students that the way they interact with their elected officials is by writing a letter to their senator, we should not be surprised when they don't think to turn to social media as a tool to make sure their voice is heard. If we don't teach students how to organize people around a good cause in a physical space, if we only teach them how to do that in a physical space, we should not be surprised when their devices are only used for entertainment. If we want our students to understand how to use technology to improve their community, to amplify their voice, to distinguish fact from fiction online, we have to teach those skills in a virtual space. Now, fortunately, there are many great examples of that happening today. One of my favorites is a project called No One Eats Alone. It's a website that helps organize schools to make sure that at lunchtime, no kid is eating by themselves and no one is left out. And of course, we've all seen recently the power of the students from Parkland, Florida, who used their voice to change the conversation. And change a national dialogue because they knew how to use technology to be good digital citizens. And then we have these students, Sakit and Salil Jajodia from India, who said, you know, we have people sitting around wasting a lot of time. Why don't we build an app that helps them find ways that they can volunteer with organizations in their community? So you can punch in where you are, and it says, here are some places where you can go and volunteer your time to make your world a better place. And then one of my favorites is a school visited with some posters that the kids had made to remind them to be kind online. Or my favorite, it might be a little hard to read, it said, do you text your mother with those fingers? Right? And then a reminder, be kind online. If you need more ideas for this, you could also check out Kristen Matson's new book, Digital Citizenship in Action, which is awesome, or drop in on the Digital Citizenship PLN and get some ideas from that group. There are lots of good things happening. Let me end with a story. This is a story about Kristen Lane. And Kristen was a junior at the time and wanted to sell her, was going in to become a senior and wanted to sell her prom dress from her junior year in order to get money to buy a prom dress for her senior year. So she posted a picture online and asked for people to buy the prom dress. Unfortunately, what she got was a series of people who were making horribly hateful comments about her, making fun of her weight, making fun of her looks. She responded the way you should, as appropriately as possible, but it was relentless. It didn't stop. They kept going, kept bugging her, kept pestering her, kept cutting her down. And you've heard enough stories like this by now that I could probably stop here and you could probably tell me the ending. You can see where this is going. You can see where this would ultimately lead to. And it was until one student, maybe one of yours, simply posted, I think you look beautiful. And then as the father of a teenage girl, this story hits close to home. And then got others to do the same. And before you knew it, people started flooding her with comments about how wonderful and beautiful she was. And in a statement against cyberbullying, people began contributing and pouring in contributions. Kristen ended up making $5,000 and used that money to help buy dresses for other people in her school that couldn't afford them. All because one person understood what it meant to be a good digital citizen. Learning to be an effective digital citizen is not something that happens if we don't actively teach it. And preparing a generation of effective digital citizens is the most important thing we can do to ensure a democracy for the future. So, can I ask you all for your help? I'd like to take a minute right now, and I'd like for you to think of one thing that you can do to promote digital citizenship this coming year. And I want you to write it down. We'll take a minute here, just think about it, and write down one thing that you're willing to commit to do to promote digital citizenship. with your school and your students this year? I'll give you a minute to think about it. Now, I would invite you, those of you who are willing to do so, to share your digital citizenship commitments with us on social medium of your choice. If you can share them with the hashtag DigCitCommit and ISTE 18, we will share them at the next 2 general sessions as people are coming in. And we will help amplify and retweet and use our social team to make sure your ideas are spread. Because if everyone in this room, just do the math here for a second, if everyone in this room agrees to do just one thing to do their part, I think we may just have a tipping point. And you, right here, will make a tremendous difference for the future of the world that our kids will grow up in. Thank you.